minced digits, handwritten digits as well. So yeah, you've got a lot of kind of famous data sets, which you can use to benchmark your algorithm against. That's usually kind of is a, you can, they usually give you some request competitions, you have these data sets. Are we supposed to just now do exercises or from the sheet?
Yes, exactly. That would be really ideal.
But then that's the end of the course, the lectures, or
Well, there will be a separate lecture at 3 p.m.
Oh.
with recipes.
Okay.
So break and workshop now?
Okay.
Just have a workshop break.
Or breaking
We
workshop?
can also
Breaking work.
we can also have the summary right now after a short coffee break if that's preferred.
I think let's do the summary.
Yeah.
Because I know that some people say that they might want anybody, so we want to make sure that it's
Okay.
so we could.
So by the way, is everyone here at Shell? So if I show a case example from its internal,
Everyone's
it's
Shell.
not going to be
Violation.
no, because
No, I
sometimes
know.
it's
Yeah,
Contractors.
yeah, no, it's thoughtful. I think, anyone raise their hand? It's when they have those meetings, they're like, if you're a contractor, leave the call. Or if you know someone who's a contractor, tell them to drop off and meet you.
Really? I've never been
Yeah.
in one of those.
Yeah. And like trading is just like, so like, I'm just being recorded.
Yeah.
And then I'm being recorded saying I'm being recorded. It's just inception.
Do you want to tell the camera?
Oh, you're so funny. Yeah, just ignore what I said, guys.
especially for your contract.
Especially for a contractor.
Yep.
Is there a way to make a list of parameters you need to break the list?
The list is in the file, I think.
Oh, it's an end of trees and then.
Yes.
Okay.
Or
You just know that because you know
So some gradient boosting functions optimize the parameters themselves. If you look at the hastily programmable size of the parameters, they optimize.
Because I found there was a tutorial listed on the F1, the ACC, and there's similar thing, but I should.
Oh, that's measures of
Yeah, yeah. But I didn't know what F1 was, so.
Oh, I think F1 is the harmonic mean of 70 to specifically.
Okay.
Is it?
It's a test on me, so.
So look for F beta. F1 is F beta for beta equals 1. I think it's the harmonic mean of sensitivity.
Yeah. She gets it, training started, did it? Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's it.
Just go.
No, it's just like, so, yeah.
grid is you would have to give it a control object, like make.
Okay.
So if you wanted to grid tuning,
Yeah.
if you wanted to
Because
do
the elements
racing,
Yeah, I want to start with the tuning and then
No,
kind
it's-
of rough it.
Yeah.
and then
Yes,
maybe
always
zoom in.
before you figure any album,
But is that
learning album, you need to normalize.
yeah, exactly.
And also remove limiting values or be able to treat them in a special way. You can't leave names. So
Yeah,
normalizing,
But then
yeah.
there must be other
Because basically imagine if you
Yes. And
features,
you can see
let's say volume versus, say you got a price that is only,
command.
now let's even go for a extreme example. I don't know, say you are
Get parameters.
studying the weight diamonds versus price, the correlation, yeah? The weight is grams,
Or
right?
you
It
could
will be
also
0.1.
in
So
the
you,
list
so you have the data in kilogram, 0.001,
parse.
I don't know, yeah? And then the price will be 1,000.
Parameters that you think
So
of
order of magnitude is very
or
different. You see what I mean?
Gives you a
So
table
in the
that you can access
features,
either by calling
if the algorithm doesn't know how to understand when features are really big compared to features are really small, does that mean that they don't have so much of an effect? No, that doesn't mean that. So you need to normalize it and put them all in the same scale. You see what I mean? It's very important. That's why it's always.
Yeah,
It means that you actually get to have them to they give away more of those anymore.
Oh, no. So the PCA is just one type of processing that you can do to get features, no linear features. It's not necessarily an algorithm. Well, it could be an analysis. So,
Well,
what
what
if
is my
you get the PCS, yeah, it's
So they
just
go into
Right.
things out of
one
the back,
I don't have that laptop.
and then KPCA is
But-
when you have
Yeah, I
kernel.
have a,
So you know, like,
but
today,
she was telling me
you
about
realize
this
that
dumping station
sometimes the data
sexy
might not be
laptop
linear.
issue.
Yeah. And the normal PCA can't help you with it, but it can, but it's not good. So when you put a kernel, with the kernel, then you manage to separate the PCA.
Yeah, actually, it's an economics.
So it's just two versions of
There was
things.
a lot
One
of
uses a kernel, the other one doesn't. And that's when you, but
See,
why you didn't have to normalize it, that's
That's
one
one of my
question, right?
biggest
Why for
fears,
PCS you
that in
have to
this job,
normalize
none of the
it?
skills that I want to keep current.
I would say, try, putting that code and normalize, you know, yeah, and see if there's any effect. But I don't think they will.
Yeah.
No, you can normalize it exactly the same way. So you just copy that line.
Limitations of getting my hands on any sort of any data set that is sizable enough to do these things.
One to
I have,
60.
yeah, okay, I get my hands on costs, based on three things.
Yes.
I don't need complex regressions to figure out how to solve
No,
that. So I work for a public school, and basically identifying areas for opportunity areas for using other people's data. So say for example, synergies
So
between
basically, what
manufacturing
I understand is this is only taking two rows in column. This is taking the first and the second column. Which, what are the first and second column?
So there's a lot of being built by that have already been built.
Okay, yes, because you need not
leverage. And there's some of the things that each
Okay, yes, so
individual
these are
business
PCS,
has
okay,
built
principal components, yes, so.
Sometimes different businesses are using exactly the same data sets in different places, and then they're paying triple to that, so showing that. And it's more about making things evident.
Because some algorithms, you would see really bad performance, but I think it would be so good.
specify how many bullets you want, whether you want
But no one knows about all of these things because dancing is so wide, and then you have that person working in retail level. Why would he know about the manufacturer's data? So it's up to us.
You can see it.
No, it means
To look, yeah.
it means at
But
each
only
stage
on the
of the
side. And and then we speak to everybody else.
So you
in the
specify
team,
that
what are
once
the plans,
for the
what we
outer,
train, everybody else
See,
is
because
trained.
relational data is very
what's
similar.
for
You see the
the ones for the
scales?
inner split.
They are similar scales, so the effect won't be as acute. You see what I mean? Because it's all kind of zero. There's nothing like one rule.
So there were, I identified synergies in, synergies.
The order of magnitude is around the same.
The visualization.
But run it with the normalization. It's always a good practice to normalize your data.
Yeah, some people use
With
Tableau,
anything.
some people use Spotify, ClickView, TNS.
For the chart,
and
it will be some most
you know, so you're in a-
because otherwise you don't get maybe weird things.
you're in a game, you're one of those. And then,
Those columns, they call them normalization.
but so the first one was first thing I did when I came into this role was from study who's using what, how much is costing them, and then what can we get.
No, it goes by, it's normalization by feature. And then each feature is independent. The normalization of each feature is independent of the other one. Yeah. So it doesn't look at the entire data and then say what's the maximum of the entire thing. No, it's column feature by feature because
And then they.
that's the same data, right? You cannot compare
There's so much that I can
price of a
identify
diamond
from, so
with
not the one who's
kilogram,
actually-
the weight of a diamond, you know? You need to say, okay,
Well-
from all these diamond samples,
It's somewhat
which was my
limited.
maximum? Yeah, then I use that to subtract.
Then it's
Well,
not
there's
up to
many
me
ways to normalize. You can
to
normalize to the
remove
maximum, or you can
things. It's just
normalize
so
with the
many
mean.
things to remove,
You subtract the mean
to convince
of the entire
the
column,
person
the
who
mean
brought in the tool
weight
to
of the
convince the
diamond,
other
so
people
that
to
when you
use
plot
it,
it,
to
it
use
will
it,
be
the
centered at
person
zero.
who's in the best position to actually say, okay,
You
no,
know,
let's
your histogram.
see the benefits of this other one, maybe we can save some money in here.
But it's just to kind of have, because you know, if you normalize the entire data set, then all the features will be between 0 and 1. You see what I mean? You're normalizing
For
it.
example.
So they always fall regardless.
And
So
the other very
the one that
regrettable-
has a 1, that's the
maybe
maximum value.
Yeah, some regrettable thing is that once something makes its way into
Yeah.
that, it's very hard to take
Then
it out.
the
So when
sample data set
someone
which we have.
builds a series of boards in ClickView and they spend some
But if you wrote-
it's only about 100 people using it, no way we can get rid of it. Now,
Those
IT
two
just have to get on with it and then,
rows, why?
and in the
Is that-
future,
Is that the entire kind of data set?
It's 1,300.
Ah, okay, omitted. No, but that's just because it didn't show it. But it did it in the entire data set. If you plot one of these columns, let's see if we can just plot. Is this like already normalized?
Just normalize it here. Yeah,
Where's
it's
the
normalized.
ones?
Yeah, once data. Once
That? Was it? Ah, sorry. Okay, ones. If you plot one of the
not enough knowledge sharing. So part of my team is working on that, on self-service, self-service, learning how to use the tools, and I run this external study on how we can do that for zero cost. So basically looking at things like, yeah, YouTube, etc. But then Shell always wants something standardized. So it wasn't good enough to just say go to Google how to use Tableau, and then you will see the YouTube website, even the Tableau website, they have free stuff. But they want someone that everybody needs to be directed to, you know, and many times they, oh, what can Cheryl do? And how
What's the
can
commercial?
Cheryl
I know
do?
there are commercial
Things
things.
like, who has the money for this? No one does. Well, at least I'm getting some attention from the
Because I don't know what to use. Have a hist of that.
they really recognize that we can't keep building in-house training for everything. So they just went see what looks like.
So you need to change your laptop big time. Why haven't you changed yours?
Still the name of stuff. I don't know why YouTube et cetera is not acceptable because it doesn't give them everything.
Yeah, hist and then target field. Points. Maybe you don't understand it yet.
And business users don't need any of these incentives. They will go and they will use it anyway, and they will just find out what to do.
Dollar sign.
John Rising?
Dollar sign and CFR. Right now, what to put just one key.
I'm
Okay,
going to job.
so we have almost arrived at the end of the
But they come on.
3-day workshop. So in this last session, I would like to give a brief overview on when you would use what. So I've called this the machine learning zoo. So we have, and we've seen a selection of methods. these were selected in a way that they cover sort of large and frequently used classes of supervised learning methods. But of course, there's many more methods that one could use, and then there's also these advanced scenarios, which I have mentioned in the very first lecture, but not really talked about this week. So this lecture will be more a general, high-level overview. If you start with your data, how do you go along, and at some point you arrive at modeling, and once you're there, what do you do, or what do you want to do in terms of machine learning? So as always, it makes sense to think about the context where data comes from. What do you want your modeling to answer, and how do you translate your scientific question in a, say, benchmarking or modeling experiment? Once you have a type of model identified that is useful, what are you going to do with it? What kind of decisions are taken based on this? So, good question. When it comes to recipes, if you look at on the Scikit-Learn webpage, then one nice summary of what to do in terms of machine learning is this that you can find on that webpage. For example, this first bullet point is quite nice. If you have 50 samples or less, go and get more data. So then depending, right, do you want to predict a category or continuous data, then you go to classification or to regression. Or not maybe, since unsupervised learning, and if you have structured data, then you're here at the tough bullet point. But one thing I would really like to point out, I mean, it says start here. It says start here, but that's not really the start. So why is this not the start?
It seems the data is perfect
Well,
and clean.
Exactly. At this point, you would be expected to already have looked at data in some way, so you're not just going to throw a random forest or stochastic gradient boosting machine at your data without even knowing what might be in the data or might be not in the data, or kinds of data quality issues you have. And even before that, you have to think about what scientific question you actually want to answer with the data, where the data comes from. Right? So is there an experimental setting from which the data comes? Are you comparing two groups? Are you comparing an intervention and the outcome of an intervention with each other? Or is this observational data? So what does prediction even mean? So is this, what does the model mean if you want to get, if you have one? Right? Or can the question you have even be answered from the data? So maybe sometimes things aren't measured. Maybe things aren't measured properly. Maybe there is issues in, say, if you ask if I change this parameter in this machine, how will it behave? But if that only was observed, or then you may not be able to answer it from the data. We have causation or association that you're trying to argue. Can the data answer questions on causation or intervention? So usually only, so without further assumptions, you can only answer questions about causality if the data is collected in a carefully designed setup or in a carefully designed study, or otherwise you will have to make additional assumptions. And it leads you down a completely different path, design of experiments, but it's also an important question that one needs to answer before throwing the random forest at a random prediction problem that might arise in the data. And then only when you have answered this, then you might come up with the statistical questions that you are going to address. So are you really going to do the right thing to address the question? Or are you just doing something similar, which seems to be related, which doesn't address the question, or predicting a surrogate, whatever. So about things like this, one should be really clear, and much of it can actually be done without even looking at the data. Right? Only knowing how the data was collected, and if in principle the data looks like this, what can you say or not say? Do you have, what's the ground truth? Where is the ground truth in the data? Is there ground truth that was collected, or if there is no ground truth that is related to your scientific question, what can you even do? So ground truth is a really important question, ground truth in your data that allows you to give an answer in a scientific experiment of whatever kind, say whether it is a experiment in the computer, a resampling experiment, or whether there is already an experiment built into the data, say an intervention study.
Can you introduce ground truth with a different data set
Of course.
and then add that into your
So
model?
there's no reason, so we will see in one of the use cases, right, that actually there might be multiple data sets and the variables might be in one whereas the ground truth is in the other. But it depends on your question. So it will be more concrete, possibly in examples. So let's have a look at some case studies. Not looking at the data yet, just thinking about the scientific rationale of what kind of method we want to apply, whether we can reason this way. Maybe there is an error in the reasoning. This is also one of my favorite examples. So let's suppose the following. We're at a retailer and or a supermarket, and there's coupons handed out. And then the question is, so this handing out of coupons, did that really increase spending of the customer? So there's plausibly you could explain that by, well, okay, so you're going to give a discount, but maybe the customers come more often for the discount. So once they're already there, they also buy other things they would have otherwise forgotten to buy, that increase the spending, maybe. So you get the sales records are clean, so let's assume these are all quite nicely cleaned and explored and everything, and then a predictive model building is done on one of these data analytics platforms that are commercially available, and then in the end a boosted tree model turns out to predict quite well the spending given whatever features you get from the coupon usage pattern. So also you do a proper benchmarking experiment, significance testing and everything. So it's been much better than the uninformed baseline. And anyway, the size of the data set was huge. So you get really great improvement in predicting the spending when you just use the coupon usage pattern. Right? And if you use demographics, say, and you compare that, adding in the coupon usage, it help. So indeed, more precisely, it's not only related, you cannot only predict, but indeed that people who are using coupons more often spend more. Hence, it is concluded that handing out the coupons had led to the customer spending more.
Isn't this like kind of looking for the wrong causality? Because I mean, if you would compare it with this behavior of the customers before the coupons, like for example, if I'm a frequent spender, if someone gives me a coupon, I will still be a frequent spender.
Exactly. That is exactly true. So there is no comparison group mentioned here.
Exactly.
And it's also one frequent mistake one makes because if you're talking about supervised learning, you're talking about prediction. And in a hidden implicit sense, this seems to imply that it also predicts the change that is going to happen if you hand out something.
Exactly.
But it actually only measures an association, only tells you that people who anyway already spend or use coupons more, that they already spend more, but it could be the causalization could be the other way around, right?
Exactly.
So if that was not part of the data collection, so another famous example of this kind, so one can, for example, show that people were watching football more often, experience hair loss more often.
Depends who you support.
They're correlated.
Because there are more men.
Yes,
And men have
exactly.
testosterone.
But don't give it away. Where did it away, right? So the one doesn't cause the other, right? So it's not an experiment that is conducted. It's trying to conclude from an association and causation. Some of the and that's one of the most frequent errors that I actually have previously encountered when seeing applications of machine learning. So, I mean, just the terminology prediction seems to mislead so many people in believing that this is actually a causal relationship that is modeled. It's sometimes slightly disconcerting, even though without a careful experimental setup, say having a control group of people who are not offered the coupons or comparing before and after, without that you cannot really conclude what was the cause and what was the effect. Because even if variables are related, even if one variable can be predicted, right, that certifies an association, but the one variable could cause the other to change, or the other could cause the one to change, or there could be some hidden common effect, like being male in this case, that is associated with both features that you measure, whereas you do not measure the hidden variable, the confounder. What of course you can exclude is a association by randomness, so that you exclude by a hypothesis test. But of course, if you don't do a hypothesis test, you are not even excluding that.
So in the end of the day, you need to understand the field that you are working on, right? I mean, in the sense.
Well, you need to understand at least the experiment.
I mean, this is kind of common sense everyday life experiment,
Exactly,
right?
of course.
For example, like in the context of Shell, like if you
Yeah.
are trying to do something on the reservoir data and you don't
Exactly. So what
understand.
kind of measurement is this? Is this measurement, do you make this measurement after the hole was drilled or before it was drilled?
Exactly.
Is it a kind of measurement for which you already need some kind of precondition to happen or not? When do you have the measurement? What kind of, so is it a geological measurement? Is it an engineering type of measurement? So I mean, what in the end it exactly measures, I mean, it's something from this particular context. You may not need to understand the whole chemistry in detail, but just the situation in which the measurement is made, actually for interpreting your results is a crucial condition. So even if the hair loss occurs after watching the football game, it doesn't need to be causally related. Let's say slight variation on that theme. If the second observation, if the predicted variable is temporally later, it doesn't need to be causally related to the feature you predict from, even if it appears later.
But still, it's going to be very, very difficult to know whether you exclude.
Well, of course.
Even for the coupons, right? The people that you handle out coupons to could also be specialized, selected on a special way, right?
Distance for.
Yeah, but if you don't know that, then what you can conclude is limited. And if you're working on a problem like this, or if you're consulting with the retailer, then this is a crucial question to ask, because they want to know, well, is handing out coupons really helping? And if you then want to follow good scientific practice, then of course the first question you have to ask is, given the data, can we even answer that question? Because if you didn't measure people who were not handed coupons, or you didn't measure supermarkets where you didn't have this intervention, then from what kind of comparison could we even conclude that the coupons help? Or I mean, could you just say big data, the coupons help, and hire me again next year?
That's tempting.
Yeah, sometimes, but sometimes people notice that they try to follow your strain or your trail of argumentation, and there's huge holes in it that's easily pointed out as well.
Jared has found a Rainy Business, which is a very good example of this kind of patient. It's the daily mail list of things that give you cancer.
Oh, okay. So what gives you
Cancer
cancer?
rated,
How
yeah.
should we share?
So also, watching football gives you prostate cancer, by the way.
Does
But it
everything?
prevents breast cancer. That's
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
In this list is everything from being a woman to being black to candlelit dinners. So it's just like
candlelight dinners.
Yeah, so it's interesting to think like.
Yeah, I've had candlelight dinners.
Well, you got here was isn't it? They're going to increase you.
Anyway. That's a list that actually exists with links, I guess.
Yeah, I'll just send it to you.
And I can put it on Wikipedia and then use it as a reference.
There you go. There you go.
Right.
Science. People sometimes tend not to underappreciate a good experiment. An experiment which can also tell you, no,
If you put it out there, media will buy it.
Hmm?
Yeah. So, yeah, let's
Just put it out there.
We all know how trustworthy the Daily Mail
Yeah,
is.
doesn't
It's
matter.
like single source of truth.
Yeah, what is true?
Think that people are cancer.
Okay,
Human
so-
being.
Okay, another case study.
Yeah.
It's all correlated, yeah.
A cat.
Another case study. So say we have some unspecified machines for which we want to find optimal settings. Or say machines making products of a certain kind, and or say car motor can also optimize for different settings. And this might be continuous, and you're trying to find the best setting for the machine. So there's quality of operation or the quality of the product that comes out of it. Then what are we going to do? Well, we're collecting parameter settings. So of course, not all machines have the same parameter setting. We're collecting different parameter settings from which we want to predict the quality of the outcome of the manufacturing process. And we're doing a proper benchmarking experiment, and then we get a model that predicts very well, given the parameter settings for the machine, the quality of the outcome would be, say, logistic regression model, which is quite well interpreted, or it could be a kernel support vector machine, which turns out to be the best model here. So then we're going to use the model to prescribe. So we're going to use the model to search the parameter space, so the best model that has been shown to be predictive. We're going to use the best model to search the parameter space for possibly even better settings. Now, of course, the manufacturing process takes some time, so over the next 2 months, and it's going to be used to prescribe best settings found in this two-step optimization process. So first, fitting a predictive model that has proved to be excellent on a variety of settings, and then using that predictive model to prescribe an optimal setting. So we're going to substitute a number of parameter settings and see how well we would do. Is there any issues with this, or can we just do it like this? And if it wouldn't be a machine, say, but medical therapy, where you can take say drugs in different concentrations, so it could be cancer therapy, and we're just giving different concentrations of cancer drugs, trying to predict the survival, and then using the best model, trying to find the best concentration of the drug for a given patient. That would be sort of an analog in the health world. Is that a good idea? So if
Isn't it a bit of
you
a
run the learning
freelance
machine,
model?
would you take the advice as a doctor of the learning machine for the prescribed drug concentration? Would you run your machines on a setting predicted in this way?
If we're only looking at 2 months worth of data.
Well, let's say the data is worth like 10 years, but you fit it into. But of course, it takes time. It takes time to run. I mean, cancer therapy takes time.
Yeah. Knowing a drug.
Producing X takes time.
So you've got that historic data.
Yeah, you have a lot of historic data to which you fitted the model, and it's really, really accurate. So you're using that model to find new parameter settings, concentration of drug, or different decision points to manufacturing. Could I be a bad idea? Idea which is disputable or cancer.
Are you changing something that's going to change the data?
Yeah, but we did infer this from data that is already there.
And you say there are lots of parameters.
Yeah.
So then kind of you
But the model, it predicts very well, so can we,
In sample or out of sample?
out of sample, it's properly done benchmark. So on the data we have already observed, it's really good out of sample, great. Predicts with extreme accuracy.
This is a trick question, I know.
Is it a
You're
trick
just
question?
wanting us to say yes.
I don't know if it's a trick question or is it not a trick question. This is close to a lot of application scenarios.
You just do it on 2 sets, so one leaving the same and then one have these like tune parameters and see which one's better after 2 months.
Yeah, but maybe then your patients are dead or your machines are dead.
Half of your patients. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's your control? What would happen if you hadn't given
Well, if you don't make any changes, that is certified for by the old data. So old data just go along to all based on this.
So can you measure the risk?
The risk. The risk of the strategy. How would you measure the risk of the strategy if you haven't applied it before?
In terms of quality.
Yeah, you can quantify. Yeah, so when you can quantify quite precisely when a person is dead or not. You can quantify maybe quite precisely at the quality of the product.
But
What are you saying for the next 2-month period, right?
Yeah.
Is that the part that we need to pay attention to? Now you want to choose the settings for 2 months and maybe.
Not really.
But
But
wait,
it just takes so long to acquire new data with new settings. It just takes
So you
too
set
long
the
for-
machines and now you're running them for 2 months.
We're doing the cancer therapy for a month. So it takes so long to see whether it worked.
Yeah,
One that uses the
exactly.
complete period, like the test period plus the 2 months. No, well, why not use the complete series, so the test series that was.
But the idea is now to make new settings to the machines and to make such settings as are predicted to be best by minimizing or by maximizing the gain from the model.
But wait, so you were setting a machine in a given way, and there was a production, right?
Yes.
And then you took the data from like settings ABC, then CDE, blah
Yeah,
blah blah blah.
Exactly.
And then the machine said, okay, if you put D on this level and B on this level, then the production is the highest.
Well, no. So you didn't make any changes. You just did observe for like 10
Exactly.
years.
So I think maybe this is the problem, no? That once you start to play with the system, but not just with the data, then the system can reveal new features
Yes,
that
exactly.
the data doesn't
So
have.
then the generalizability assumption. So this will be only valid if the new settings are similar to the old settings.
Yeah.
Now the best setting that the method gives you is not necessarily similar to those already observed. So if you have some setting that shows you an improvement as we improve it, but you never observe the minimum, then different methods will extrapolate in a different way,
Yeah.
and it will not tell you what happens if you intervene in this way. If the previous data was only observational, using your predictive model that will only work, is only guaranteed for work for data similar to those previously observed.
Exactly.
It won't tell you what will happen if you now change your parameters.
Yeah.
And especially not if you change your parameters outside the expected parameter range.
I mean, I could rate it with the drugs, like if, I don't know, aspirin helps and something, but then if I change the combination, I don't know also
Yeah.
how this will, you know what I mean? This
So
is,
it's not always like in a drug, maybe like the cancer drug. If you give more, it helps more. But do you then really want to give 100 times the?
yeah.
So which would be the answer a linear model would give you, for
Yeah.
example? Or you just give an infinity, and that might not be a good idea with the cancer drug.
But what you could do is run it with all different settings of the machine, right? Investigate the outcomes, and then use machine learning to get the optimal value for the setting for the machine.
But then aren't you
But
going for this
this
goal?
is only
So-
reliable. The prediction is only reliable under the generalizability assumption. It's only reliable. The prediction is only reliable if the parameter setting is similar to those already observed under conditions already observed which were not interventional.
Okay, but if you do that, then it will be possible, right?
If the new parameter settings are similar, then yes, there is. It's reasonably plausible to trust that kind of prediction, but if it's completely outside the range, one might want to exercise caution.
No, but that is exactly what one does with certain medicine, right? To get
Yeah, but then,
more
so if you do this, then you want to do a proper comparison study, an interventional one anyway. But if the prediction is outside the parameter range, then this might already be an indication that something is going to go wrong for now in medicine or for the machines, which is just the same issue, that your data might generalize well on data points that are completely different, and not an observational data will not necessarily generalize to interventional data. Because if you make your football fans not watch football, we're not sure whether it will prevent hair loss.
Is there a statistical test you could run on the new data to kind of see what's the probability that that data point came from the same distribution as the other data?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So that would go in the direction of multivariate tests for equality of distribution or for similarity of distribution being inside the parameter range. How to do this for multivariate distributions is not entirely clear, the subject of current research. And if you have a univariate distribution, okay, where the density is high. So density estimates are reliable if you're in a univariate setting, or maybe even if you have two features. But if you have a lot of features, then to check, is this a likely parameter setting, or a parameter setting which is likely to have been observed, that's not entirely clear how to do that in the best way. So that's quite unfortunate, because such a method would give you a tool to tell you whether the new setting, whether the prediction in the new setting is expected to be reliable. But that's also one of the crucial issues in transfer learning. So say if your new data is slightly different, can you still trust the prediction? One of the main questions in a setting where the new data are going to be different. So even a fully Bayesian approach where you have a posterior which gives you an estimate of the standard error of the prediction might not save you from the observational versus interventional issue. Okay, another case then. So this is quite similar to things that have been on the news recently. And so of course, leaving now ethical concerns aside, now let's assume we would like to build a model that predicts or assesses known criminals' risk of relapse based on demographics and forensic psychiatrists. Based on a variety of data. So usually forensic psychiatrists assess the risk of relapse in high-risk cases, but there are some areas where these assessments are not available. So now, what's going to be done? One's going to build a predictive model that, based on demographics and a variety of other things, so for example, why is the criminal under surveillance? Why are they in prison? A predictive model is going to build that is going to predict the forensic assessment. And actually, it is found that there is such a model, again, obtained from benchmarking that is done in this day as a state of the art, that there is such a model that, given the demographic data and various other kinds of information, can predict the forensic assessment, which with quite high accuracy. Then we're going to use to screen for criminals with high risk of relapse.
Why are you using the assessments and not the data itself?
What is the data itself?
I mean, you know if someone has come to jail twice rather than once, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's one major problem with this. We're predicting a surrogate and not the actual outcome. So it could, for example, be that the forensic psychiatrists always assign a high risk of relapse for black persons, for example, and a low risk of relapse if the person is white. So if the prediction is with high accuracy, it only confirms possibly a racial bias that the psychiatrist may have,
So
and
it's
not
like something-
giving you a prediction for the actual risk of relapse. Which, I mean, this is predicting a surrogate. So one also needs to be really precise about what it is one wants to predict. But of course, I mean, there's other concerns, instance like ethical ones, and a possible other concern might be what kind of data are we training on. So if the assessments are, or if reliable data are only available in urban regions, that's also a problem. But if it's the forensic psychiatrist assessment that is only available there, but this is not even what you would want to predict if you would want to do this problem.
So actually, just building on that example,
Yes.
if you have more data in your data set that characterizes one class more than the other.
Oh, so you're talking about this terrorists thing. So if
Sorry?
you have only a small number of terrorists and you have a huge number of non-terrorists, and then you're training a model on two classes which are hugely imbalanced,
Yes.
you will, yeah, so I mean, this is actually anomaly detection. The anomaly is a terrorist. And if you use normal models for that, you will have huge amounts of false positives. So you will detect a lot of people being terrorists while they aren't. You use a random forest, say you have only 6 samples of terrorists and 1 million people who are not terrorists, and you train a random forest on that. That's just a really, really bad idea. It has been done.
Yeah, there was this report on, the average terrorist is a male of 180 height with a bird, and so when the
Yeah, but generalizing from a sample of 6. Then
yeah, exactly. That
seems
was
like
the
a
thing.
bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. That was, but
Because then you could challenge that and say, well, what about, say, like the IRA, which is on a very different demographic to what is a Monday's, well, Monday, like.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disputing that this is stupid, but I'm saying that the agencies of big countries are using such models.
Yeah,
This is scary.
Unwarranted generalizations with machine learning.
This is why I
The
always
6
say-
the plural anecdote is not data.
So do you have a good rule of thumb about how much data of each class you should have in your sample, so to make sure that you're not falling into that problem? Would it be obviously 50-50?
50,
Yeah.
50 per class, maybe. But then again, all conclusions you make in the classical supervised setting apply only to similar data that was obtained from the same process. So if you now, exactly, so if you learn a model, say in one country, apply to a different one, might not be exactly very good idea. Okay. These details aside, I could go on talking a long time about just very simple issues that come from the scientific side. So all these issues you see, they were not really in how to apply or how to run our code, but really in this scientific reasoning, in the chain of argumentation, which at some point was somehow faulty, jumping to conclusions and not being aware of limitations in the data. Hence, I would call it is really, really important to be clear in argumentation. So the connection between what is the question I would want to answer and how exactly does the analysis or the benchmarking experiments I'm conducting answer that. That is really something that needs to be made clear and precise, especially in an application setting. So which finding implies which conclusion and how. So does this imply only association or causation? Can we conclude, so that is there an experiment, would there have been a point somewhere in the reasoning at which we could have seen, no, this is not the correct conclusion, or would we have gotten the conclusion irrespectively because there is not one such decision point? So if there was no point for something, we would have said yes, no, it's not scientific argumentation. If there's no experiment, then this conclusion is not scientific. Quantification is also really important because humans tend to see patterns where there are none. You will see here maybe one bunch of red points. You would say maybe they are in this region, but these are actually there's 2 samples from a standard model. So quantification is really important just to make sure that patterns you see or patterns you would like to see are really there. So an argument like, oh, we see there is a pattern, it's not supported by a plot, it's not really part of an argument. And if you do especially in the context of unsupervised learning, this is a really, really shaky grounds one stands on if one makes this part of a chain of argumentation. Hence, hypothesis testing, quantify whether you're really seeing a pattern that is there or whether there's no evidence, whether the pattern is explained by randomness, and that also includes, say, differences between methods or comparisons that then lead you to scientific conclusions. Questions about this?
So what would
Maybe I'm just preaching to the choir here.
So what would be an appropriate type of hypothesis testing? Most would attend.
Can you predict the color given X and Y? Right, because if you can, then they're spatial. So of course, with correct a posteriori significance. So and of course, in the analytics workflow, especially as we do machine learning, it's really important. We have already discussed this to know where the data comes from, what is the potential limitations. In R, you would say your R script, so a person can really go through line by line and check whether everything is sensible. Right. So in the internal projects, I've been also putting all my code repositories that can be accessed and checked, and the discussion also should be really crystal clear where will the arguments, the scientific arguments, come from the benchmarking experiment. So especially report on findings, and then if you do some interpretation, so it's plausibly implies that it should also be made, there should also be a clear distinction on what is now statistical finding, what is now quantitative finding, and how you interpret those findings. I guess the usual things we would also hear in the statistics course. Okay, recipes. Other questions about good practice? I mean, this all applies whenever you use machine learning as part of your data analytics process. It also applies to all kinds of other statistics or analytics you might be doing, including the data cleaning, data matching, including the exploration, including more classical ways of modeling, but in particular also.
Just on that, so often I find, that I want somebody to review my code or my models, right?
Yeah.
Then sometimes I don't, not necessarily everybody in Shell has these sort of skills, and then, so how will you recommend, how will you go about it? Do you publish, is it something that you recommend, like publishing your research in blogs or something to kind of get
Well,
it?
put the code online, one thing. Many people don't put code online when they publish research papers. So often you read a random research paper that claims that method X is better than method Y in a data set, and then there's no code, and you try to reproduce the experiment, and it turns out it's not really true, or you don't know how they tune, or you don't know how they tune the method, you don't know how they resample the data set, and you try again, and start thinking, are you doing something wrong, or did they do something wrong? And sadly, this is not a rare thing. It's already been known and discussed, for example, in the medical community, that some results are just borderline significant, and you have trouble reproducing them, but reproduction studies with negative results aren't published because only nice positive results are being published in machine learning. It is actually quite similar, say if you try out dropout and it doesn't work as well as some papers claim, then it's a negative result which is difficult to publish. The reviewer will say, but everyone knows that dropout works, then there must be something wrong in your code.
Do you recommend certain channels to do that?
Certain,
Kind of like
well, test it yourself.
Yeah, no, but
You
like-
know how to benchmark.
websites, or is there a community for these sort of things?
So there is a movement in that direction. The open source toolboxes, of course, are one part of it, but there's also now OpenML, which is a community dedicated to collecting data sets and tasks, just to make benchmark experiments available to everyone and make the results reproducible. It's called, I think, openml.org, and it's pretty recent.
Is that for our code only?
That's for any code, eventually, I think. So eventually the plan is to have an interface to the most popular data analytics toolboxes. So at least you have a fair comparison on a range of data sets. I mean, but we'll come to that in a moment. Yeah. And you say, it's slightly troubling that there is not much literature that tells you on the meta level how far you can trust certain strategies on certain types of data. We'll come to that in a moment after recipes, right? So on the machine learning side, but first we're still not there yet at doing machine learning. An exploratory data analysis should be done. To look at the variables, looking at associations, just look at is there any data quality issues I can spot, and before that even you would clean your data. So you spot any associations, quantifications would be done. And from there on you really go to modeling. So it is sometimes custom in the machine learning world. I mean there's these data sets and everyone knows that they are clean, and there is a designate target variables, so you just throw in machine learning methods at them, and that's it. But if you have really data in which you are interested for a specific scientific question and for the data itself, and not for just justifying a method that you have come up with, then exploring and understanding